Carol, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
And your answer will define how we start this.
Okay.
Do you want to get nuts, Carol?
No.
Okay, then let's start with Barbenheimer.
What is the feature-length podcast? Anyone?
The feature-length podcast is a show where three idiots talk about film and entertainment.
Good answer.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, are you talking to us?
Yeah. I'm talking to the voices in my head.
Like, I truly don't know. It felt like a fever dream. I swear to God, I could not
It sounds so
make this shit
stupid
up.
hearing that.
If you're listening to this is a podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast, a podcast where we talk about movies and TV for a feature length of time.
All right, let's do it.
What order did you watch them in, Carol?
Oppenheimer, then Barbie.
Perfect, because we did too. So
As did we.
Should we start with Oppenheimer then?
Let's start with Oppie.
All right.
Okay.
This movie is fucking rad.
It's very good. It is very depressing, but
Yeah.
very excellent.
Depressing, yeah.
Rad in a depressing way.
In a depressing
yeah.
way, yeah.
Rad in a bad vibes way, but yeah, it's very good. Carol?
Yeah, I did like it. I will say, and I don't know if it's because I saw it before Barbie, so I was just really anxious to get into the other theater. But I'm kind of over 3-hour movies about shitty men and shitty groups of men. But like all Chris Nolan movies, it was well made. I'm very happy I watched it. I'm very happy I watched it on a big IMAX screen. But I'll probably never watch it again. I've given him my 3 hours and I'm good.
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus among a lot of people, which I think is reasonable. Dan and I both kind of, I think, took the opinion that we definitely would want to watch it again just because there was a lot of, like, details that we felt like we missed.
There's a lot of dialogue in this movie.
A lot of history.
Yeah.
And a lot of history, especially in the back half. So I'm definitely going to need to watch it again to take in some of the stuff that I just missed.
Yeah.
But also, real quick, like, the episode Carol's referencing is the one we just released on Wolf of Wall Street. And the difference, I think, here is that this movie is framed completely different.
Of course,
that was a satire,
Yeah.
and this is very much demonizing this person, which is great. That's
Yeah,
what we
well, that's
need.
why I don't hate it, you know? I did like it, but it was
Yeah.
just like, you know, I've heard the story, I'm
Yeah.
good now.
Within the demonization, and actually we're going to talk about this a little bit when we talk about Barbie as well, frankly, because
Yeah.
I expected both movies to very much be like, fuck these people, in the case of Oppenheimer being Oppenheimer, in the case of Barbie being men, and I appreciated that both movies found ways to critique but do it honestly and not in a, I'll say, pandery way, where it's like if you're going into Oppenheimer as a liberal leaning person, that like you would obviously be like, I can't wait for this movie to shit on the military industrial complex and everyone who's involved with it in World War II. And like it does shit on it, but it doesn't do it in a way that sacrifices the integrity of what we always talk about, which is like presenting an argument and its like fullest sense. In like, Dan, you're watching The West Wing right now, in the West Wing way, where it's like
In the Aaron Sorkin
way, where it's like there's no like evil characters, there's just like people with agendas. And in the case of Oppenheimer, and obviously like we should say this is based on a real person, movie versus person, like totally different. Nobody, like none of us anyway, have any fucking idea what real life Oppenheimer was like, but just strictly talking about the movie character, I think this movie does such a phenomenal job of balancing out the idea that the internet seems to not be able to grasp right now, which is that like people have magnitudes of variation within them, even as they like change and grow over time. So like young Oppenheimer is like this dicky guy, yeah, but definitely like a super liberal, like communist supporting like person, like
Communist
back in those
ideals,
days.
never a communist.
Yes, of course. And then as the war kicks in, like very much then gets into and ends up running this huge part of the military industrial complex, which is obviously shitty. And what I really appreciate is that it's like, okay, like he's doing this bad thing with a justification, but the justification is an incredibly naive justification, which is like, well, if I just build this really fucked up thing, nobody would ever be dumb enough to like continue this. Like, I'm actually doing the best thing possible. And then after the fact, it's like, well, no, you're a complete dumbass, and of course people are going to continue this. And so that's when he kind of switches sides against it. But the movie doesn't forgive him for it, because there's probably my favorite scene, like, and we won't get too spoiler heavy, it's a relatively recent movie, but like there's a courtroom scene towards the end of the movie where dude from Planet of the Apes is like interrogating him, and that's Jason Clarke. That's one of my favorite like technical scenes in the movie as well, just with the use of like sound and lighting, like which is all incredible. We should talk about all that after we talk about like the like theming. But Jason Clarke like really calls him out in that scene of being like what did you think you were doing? Like, yeah, you think you can just come now hat in hand and literally hat in hand and be like, oh my god, like, why would you guys do that when I was so clearly building it with these intentions? Like, you don't get to do that. Like, you did a fucked up thing and now you have to live with it. And like the way it portrays him as like coming around as an older person to like understanding more the fucked up thing that he did. And even like there's theming within his wife of his wife being like, why aren't you fighting back against these people for persecuting you? It's never explicitly said, but it's like implied, especially with his conversation at the end of the movie, that like at least the character of Oppenheimer is more like, because I deserve it, because I did a fucked up thing, and so like I'm not gonna fight against it because I do deserve to have all these bad things happen to me. And that level of complexity in a protagonist is just shit that we do not see anymore, because people have such bad media literacy that they can't handle it. And like every time I'm on TikTok and I see anyone talking about Oppenheimer, I just scroll past it, because I'm like, I just know it's going to be people either being like impossible to listen to and talk about this movie. But Nolan being able to craft a movie that I think so eloquently captures like the journey of this person's life from like idealist to asshole to holy shit, what the fuck did I do? And to do that in a way that doesn't forgive him, but just like portrays the way a person could go through those changes in their life and how they have to be held accountable for it, I thought was excellent. And as we talked about, Dan, Nolan has so many tricks that he always pulls as like a genre filmmaker, like whether it's superheroes or action movies or sci-fi or whatever. And this is just a straight up drama that somehow feels as compelling and is as well constructed as all of his other shit.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
it's incredible.
And that connects to what I was just about to bring up, is like, this is a 3-hour biopic drama that, despite it being rated R, has performed extremely well this weekend. And I don't remember the last time a pure drama, like with some thriller elements, but that's it, has been this like this is a blockbuster because it's by Christopher Nolan and the cast is incredible and the story is just larger than life. Like, it's about the invention of nuclear weapons, which is massive in the history of the world. And it felt like, not that I can speak to it because I wasn't alive at the time, but it felt like what it must have felt like when like Citizen Kane was premiering, and that is just a drama of like a fictional, it's like a biopic, but it's a fictional person.
Right.
But it feels really similar to me, and like that was a blockbuster.
Yeah.
Maybe not in I don't know about the commercial sense, but that is
in
like
scope,
a
like
huge
it's epic
moment in movie history.
Yeah.
That's so cool to see, because you don't really see a lot of blockbusters nowadays that aren't like action movies or horror movies or thriller or whatever.
Yeah.
But to just be a 3-hour movie about a real human being, extremely character driven, and it's finding a lot of success, which is great. And yeah, like you said, it does it correctly, where it's framing him as the villain of the situation.
Yeah.
But it's also like, it's all about, a friend of the show, Miguel, said he was a bit surprised that they didn't show like any scenes of what happened in like the war or like in Japan.
Yeah.
But I said I wasn't surprised because this is a movie about the person, so I appreciate that like it didn't really jump the shark into becoming like a war movie or something.
Yeah.
Really just about the government decisions and technology and his personal life surrounding the event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will say if it did like veer into war film territory, then I would have hated it. I fucking hate war movies.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
so bored
I
of
don't
them.
think that would have worked.
But yeah, I will say I kind of find it interesting that Christopher Nolan decided to make a movie about Oppenheimer like in this day and age. And also, Dan, I don't even know if he was framed as the villain. Yes, of course, the thing he created with all of these other scientists did horrific things and no one is happy that it exists. But I don't think at any point they were ever villainizing Oppenheimer himself, especially because they showed like how much he realized the weight of what he'd done once he did it. And like maybe because I was a scientist once upon a time, like I can understand and see like him just being like, this is a problem I need to solve, and not even considering the consequences fully until someone's like, okay, now we're taking this and dropping this on countries. Thanks. So yeah, I don't know if I saw him being villainized in it, and I don't even know if he needs to be villainized for it. And like, yeah, I like how you brought up, Marco, that like we're humans and obviously like spectrums exist within us and we're always growing and learning and whatever. And like, yeah, I don't know. It is interesting that this came out in the same weekend as Barbie, because it is a lot of like, this sounds so dumb when I looping into the same sentence as Barbie, but like we're discussing like good versus evil and like what would make a person like evil beyond like the ability to even be considered partially good. Like, yeah, I don't know. It had a lot of thoughts, and like the subject matter obviously like is very depressing, and that's partially why I was like 3 hours of this, like we
it's
all
heavy.
know how this ends, especially because it is a biopic, like we're just, and like, yeah, feats of science, like, and I'm glad it was so focused on him as a person, because like if we did have to think about what he was making and then like what happened afterwards, like I think it might like be unwatchable just because it is so fucking dark, and even like thinking about where it's gotten us today. And so yeah, that's really why I'm so happy I got to watch Barbie afterwards, even though that did make me cry for like 4 hours straight.
I mean,
we were too. It was
we were
perfect to
glad
do
that
that.
we did this one before.
Yeah, I don't
Also,
think I
I'll
could have
just
done
say-
it in the other order.
Yeah.
But real quick, sorry, I
Yeah.
just want to clarify. When I said villain, I don't mean like mustache twirling comic book
Sure.
villain, but just in the sense that he is a very morally questionable person, and like, I guess not really a spoiler because this happens in like the first 5 minutes of the movie. But
And it happens in
when
real
he's
life.
pissed off, true, real life spoiler. And like in the first 5 minutes of the movie, when he's pissed off at one of his university professors, like he poisons his
Oh, yeah.
professor's apple and
Yeah.
tries to kill him with it.
Yeah.
So like,
well, and he also had like multiple affairs, like just
yeah,
like not.
even unrelated to science.
So what just being a dude. So I want to touch on both what you guys are talking about right now. Like it's interesting. Like in a way, Oppenheimer is almost both the protagonist and antagonist of this movie, because while he's building the bomb, you're almost like as an audience member rooting against him and like hoping and wishing that it wouldn't happen. And like
Yeah.
in that way, as a film character, he takes on like the villain role, because you're kind of like, I don't want him to succeed in this thing that he's doing. But then the more like protagonist, I'm not going to call him a hero because he's not, but the more like protagonist side of him as a film character comes out, I think, in the back half as we're dealing with
The results.
the ramifications. But what's so interesting is like not the ramifications of the bomb, but the ramifications of like shit that he did as a young man, and like how that stuff is now being used against him, but he feels so guilty about the bomb situation that he's like just willing to take it essentially because he needs some kind of punishment for it, which paints him in more of a not straight up villain, but I guess anti-hero role in some ways, where it's like he at least recognizes that within himself. So I do like it is a very gray area, but he has shades of both. But what I want to say is very interesting about, again, part of why this is actually such a perfect double feature outside of the tones complementing each other so nicely is both movies have villains who are portrayed as regular people, regular enough people with good intentions that are changed by a organizational group of people, if you will. So like, yeah, almost like Oppenheimer is very much about a scientist who, with good intentions, who is fundamentally altered by the military-industrial complex and how bad the military-industrial complex is for society, and then was never able to escape that post being out of the military-industrial complex because of, you know, we always talk about in World War II, like everyone loves to talk about like all the people that just like went along with the Nazis and joined the Nazis and did whatever the Nazis said, and then like the Nazis were out of power and it was like, holy shit, I can't believe I did those things. And I think this movie is one of the first, if not only, movies about the American side of World War II that's like, no, we did the same shit. This is a movie about a group of people that were basically told with propaganda that they had to do this really bad thing.
To bring
And
the boys
that's really,
home.
Yeah, which is a very bad thing. Oh, let's put a pin in something related to this. I want to draw the Barbie connection, but then I also have a fun fact to share with you guys about the real life history that I think is like adds to the moral greatness of this all. But then to jump to Barbie really quick, I know we haven't talked about it in depth yet, but it's almost the same idea there in Barbie, where like Ken in Barbie is not portrayed as an evil mustache twirling villain. He's just a childlike person with good intentions that is corrupted, but not by the military-industrial complex, but by patriarchy. Like, that's the point of Barbie.
And horses.
Yeah, and horses. So I just thought that's really interesting that both these movies...
They do share a theme.
They share a theme of, like, this, like, groups, like, corrupting innocent people and them having to kind of, like, come back from that and learn the lessons and the ramifications of it. So there was no real straight-up mustache-twirling villain in this double feature, which is a very interesting...
I guess the closest would be Robert Downey Jr.'s character.
Yeah, I was gonna say...
Yeah, I wouldn't still say that he's, like, comic book villain. Like,
definitely. He is just...
Well, he's just like a real life villain because I think that's
you're right. It's
probably
too
most
real.
of the American government, but it's fine.
Yeah. He's literally just a petty person.
None of my business.
Yeah,
but
true.
Yeah. Well, that's also like one of the reasons that I would like wanted to push back again. And like I understand now that you've explained it, Dan, your reasoning in saying it, that like Oppenheimer was villainized, etc. Because when you put it in the context of like Oppenheimer versus Robert Downey Jr., I was very much rooting for Oppenheimer.
Of course, because that's like
I see that for sure.
The brilliance of the movie in terms of like the way it switches that over, because it does such a good job of setting up us supporting Oppenheimer in his super liberal like fantasies about the way the world should work, and that is part of what is causing him all these problems in the Robert Downey Jr. era. So it's like it almost like in a way skips over the part that I think we would all be like, man, fuck this guy for, but in like a clever way. Like it still shows that and it still deals with that, but that's not actually what he's dealing with. What he's dealing with is, do you think this guy is a Russian spy? He's dealing with McCarthyism, which is like a completely different, very bad thing that we can all agree with, and obviously like nobody should have had to deal with that shit. So yeah, very interesting. So the one little pin in terms of like the evil of Oppenheimer and the bomb and the whole like American propaganda about making the bomb. One thing I was very surprised they didn't touch on in this movie, especially because the movie does really showcase the American propaganda of it all. So in the movie, there's a line about how Heisenberg is working on the German side of the bomb.
Yeah.
We all popped for Heisenberg, by the way. You should have seen our row. We were like, yeah, Heisenberg!
Keeping in mind that he was a Nazi scientist.
Yeah. Well, he was a regular scientist first.
True, and then he was hired by the Nazis. Yeah.
But this is where it gets interesting, okay? Because in the movie, there's a throwaway line where they're like, what's Heisenberg been working on? And Niels Bohr... Man, this is just like the science Avengers, this movie. It's so sick. But anyway, Niels Bohr is like, oh, like he's going down this path of creating the bomb for the Nazis. And then all the Americans, including Oppenheimer, celebrate, and they're like, oh my god, he's so far behind. That's such like a... Like, that's not going to work. There's so many months behind of us. Like, we're ahead now in the race. Many years later now, lots of historians and scientists, etc., have gone back and looked at the work that Heisenberg was doing for the Nazis. And nobody knows for sure, but... people have very strongly hypothesized that Heisenberg was essentially making mistakes on purpose because basically what a lot of physicists have said is like the mistakes were so fucking trivial that there is no way like one of the greatest minds in all of physics would have actually made these mistakes.
Cool.
And this, and I hate to bring this up, but I have to, is a very Dark Knight situation. Because as we've talked, we talk about, right, the ending of The Dark Knight with the two boats, where it's like they can each blow each other up or nobody can blow anything up and wait to see what happens. And obviously in that movie, it's all about, like, the good of humanity and heroism, and so they choose to not blow each other up, and the Joker's like, what the fuck? But, like, I think, and it's not a missed point, because obviously this movie is so subjective from Oppenheimer's perspective that, like, he wouldn't have known this. Like, this is very much, like, looking back on history and projecting stuff that nobody knew in the moment. But, like, I think it would have been cool to have some type of acknowledgement of, while Oppenheimer is at some point trying to justify the things that he's doing, maybe inserting some of the history that we know now in there of being like, look, the scientists working on the bomb on the German side fucked it up on purpose. Like, if you guys had also, like, just had faith and fucked it up on purpose that, like, nobody was ever going to do this, then we wouldn't be in this situation. Which I just think is, like, it would have been an interesting juxtaposition, an interesting metaphor to play with. And I actually thought, like, because I knew that piece of history, this whole movie, there's, like, this thing of, like, what did Oppenheimer and Einstein talk about? Like, there's this whole build-up, and there was a part of me, just because I knew that, and because Einstein was, like, also tried to be recruited by the Nazis and stuff, where I was like, man, I wonder if that conversation is basically going to be Einstein saying, like, is going to be like that Christopher Nolan moment of Einstein being like, Heisenberg like fucked it up on purpose. Like, do you really think Heisenberg would have like done those things, and now you're the creator of the bomb and whatever? Like, I really thought there was a chance for that to happen, and it didn't. And I mean, I'm fine with it not happening, because at the end of the day, this movie is, again, very subjective, and that's all conjecture based on looking back. But just a fun historical fact for you guys, and I think it would have been cool to include in some way in the movie. But I get why they did.
Post-credit scene.
Post-credit scene. Yeah.
Real quick, because you mentioned, Carol, you're wondering why Christopher Nolan, like, at this point in time, chose to make this movie. Do you know what inspired him to make this movie?
No.
This is a very fun fact.
Yeah. So apparently, like at the wrap party for Tenet, Robert Pattinson gave Christopher Nolan a gift that was like the biography book of Oppenheimer, and it inspired him to like write this movie or something.
Yeah, he read the book.
His next one,
and he was like, "Holy shit, this is interesting."
Yeah.
I wonder if he knew that that's what was going to happen.
If he thought he would inspire him to write his next script.
Well, yeah, he knows Nolan. He knew it was an interesting story. Maybe he's like,
maybe he was trying to get a role.
Slip that under his nose.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
he was trying to play Oppenheimer.
Yeah, but then he ended up being Batman, so he couldn't. But I mean, Cillian Murphy is just like incredible.
Yeah.
So,
I think he could be a shoo-in for best actor this year.
Yeah, he's phenomenal in this. I think generally, well, okay,
he would be supporting.
He would be supporting. Yeah, he's not main.
Yeah, I guess.
Also, he'll never win, but like he should. But like, I mean, performance-wise in general, like the cast of Oppenheimer is stacked. I think everybody absolutely kills it. We talked about this.
Actually, there is one criticism in that department I should make. Is like not huge, but like I think Matt Damon was the weakest link.
Oh, you mean...
Not that he was bad, but there were some line deliveries where I was like, that could have used another take.
Are you talking about...
Not even just the funny line.
Okay.
Like just some like nothing I could say like word for word.
I agree. I thought he was a touch out of place in this. But yeah, like you said, not bad, just probably like the worst of a really good group of actors.
I just think he's the only one that didn't disappear into the role.
Yeah.
Like every time I saw I was kind of just looking at Matt Damon in a mustache, whereas everyone else was just their character. Like so good.
Yeah, I don't know. Technical stuff, great. We talked about how good the sound editing was.
So much better than like the usual.
Yeah, I was a little scared for my ears going in, but it wasn't so bad.
Visual style was probably, I think, some of the best visual style Nolan has ever had in a movie. Editing was very good. With
really cool choice for the black and white versus color subjective stuff.
Very cool. Still has that little bit of non-linear editing, like the Nolan elements, but
a lot of that,
in a very in a way that works, I think, for the movie.
Actually, one other point of discussion we should have is, what do you guys think of like at the very beginning of the movie to introduce the color versus black and white stuff? There's two title cards, and one is fission and the other one is fusion.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
What do you guys think that was like why do you think the color subjective stuff was labeled as fission thematically and the black and white was fusion? I've been trying to find like a thematic reason, and I would personally have put it the other way, where like fusion was like the subjective stuff is pre-bomb and it's everything coming together, so like fusion, and then like fission is like the separation of things, right? So like the falling out, like the black and white stuff seemed like the falling out aftermath of everything.
That's really interesting.
I've been thinking about why they chose to label them the way they did.
I mean, like on the one hand, there is the very lazy answer of like the atomic bomb was fission, and so they were just like, we need two words, and so they just picked fission because of fission, and then they made the other one fusion. But I can't imagine that's the answer, because Nolan seems like he cares a bit more than not at all.
Yeah, and also they didn't need title cards.
Yeah, that's true. They didn't.
Yeah, especially so close together. That kind of confused me. I thought it was gonna like split the movie into two halves almost,
chapters,
but like
they
came pretty close one after the other.
Yeah, they were quite close. I don't know. It is weird because I could see a reading of it where it's like the fission part of the movie relates to the like adversity and like the falling apart of the world and obviously like the bomb itself. But the fusion part would only make sense if the ending of the movie was more optimistic and hopeful about like the future. Like I could see that where it's like, hey, all this fucked up stuff happened, but now it's like we have a more optimistic ending of what's to come, because that's very fission fusion. But like,
I guess in a way the world was united with the new era of nuclear bombs, because like every country has started pursuing that now. Not in a good way, but
it's odd because the movie does end on such a dour note that to have But it also doesn't end in black and white. That's the thing. It's not really a time thing. It's a perspective thing, which is also weird. Because it's not, like, the movie ends in a color scene because it's about Oppenheimer's perspective. So, like, to call Oppenheimer's perspective fission and everyone else in the movie's objective perspective as fusion, I don't know. I mean, maybe to show the, like, the disconnect that Oppenheimer has from, like, other people and how focused he was on his own self-interest at, like, certain points in his life. Potentially,
that's an interesting read.
Potentially. It's, I don't know if we'll ever get an answer. Like, I think there's probably a lot of factors that went into it. I don't know if it's just one. I think it's maybe, like, a lot of the things we've talked about and just thinking, like, it was a good way to... But, yeah, we don't need title cards. Like, we could have just done it. So, I don't know.
Anyway, I just wanted to bring it up.
It's a very good question. Carol, do you have any thoughts, any reasons?
No thoughts at all.
Wonderful. Okay. No answers.
Barbie now? Or do we have anything else to say about this one?
Barbie.
No, I think we hit all the stuff, except, of course... Oh, sorry. I will say, Oppenheimer had 3 laugh out loud moments. And
unintentionally?
One of them is cool. One of them I was like, that was cool. And then 2, I was like, you were trying to do something. And, which is fine, it happens, all movies, especially a 3-hour movie. But obviously one, as Dan knows, I've been talking about it since the trailers, but it's Matt Damon's delivery of, how about because this is the most important thing that's ever happened in the history of the world? Fuck. Like, that is just a really cheesy moment and an otherwise not.
He doesn't say fuck in the trailer.
He doesn't. But it makes it even worse in the movie because he's out of frame when he says fuck, because it's pushing in on Oppenheimer while he says it, and then out of frame he goes, fuck. And it's just like...
And, like, you hear it from the right-hand speakers because they pan the audio.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Weird moment. The other one, and I laughed. Let me tell you, did I laugh.
I'm trying to think of what this...
Oh, you'll know as soon as I start talking about it. But it's when Oppenheimer is talking to his buddy, Bernard from Elf. David Krumholtz.
You mean Bernard from the Santa Claus?
Oh, sorry, from Santa Claus. I don't know why I said Elf. Yeah, Bernard from
Santa Claus. Because he's an elf.
Oh, true, because he is an elf. He's talking to him... And when they're first in the town, and Oppenheimer's wearing his, like, military uniform, and David Krumholtz is like, why are you wearing that military uniform? And he's like, I don't know, they told me to wear it. And he's like, you don't look like you. You know, you can work here, but you just make sure you remain who you are.
That's the guy from the Santa Claus?
Yeah.
Holy shit. There was just so many men, they all mixed in my head.
Isn't that...
It's fair.
Isn't that Benny Safdie, though?
No, that's
Benny
another... Benny
Safdie's the one who wanted to make the great bomb
I'm thinking
after.
of someone else.
Yeah. There's just... You're right. There's a lot
Right.
of
Okay.
them.
This is a different character.
But then it cuts from that to Oppenheimer in a room where he's staring at a table where he has his classic Oppenheimer hat and pipe, and then he very slowly put on his Oppenheimer hat and pipe, and then he walks out of the room and there's just like a close-up shot of him with his Oppenheimer hat and pipe. And that was like a little egregious, where I'm like, this isn't a superhero movie. Like, we don't need like the costume change of like come on, we get it. Like, this is what Oppenheimer wears. It was funny, but, like, I don't think it was supposed to be funny. Oh, yeah, and then, of course, how could I forget? Robert Downey Jr. going, well, this one's a spoiler. I'm sorry, but I have to spoil it.
I thought it was going to be a scene with Florence Pugh.
Unintentionally funny? Mm-hmm. No, I didn't find those scenes funny.
I found part of a scene funny.
Okay, you can say it after, but for me,
I think I know what you're talking about. Might be a spoiler, though.
Yeah.
If we're thinking of the same thing.
This is definitely a spoiler. So maybe we'll just... The rest of the Oppenheimer discussion, we have a few spoilers, and then we'll get into Barbie. It's when Robert Downey Jr. is like, what's the name of the senator that, like...
Oh, yeah.
Was the deciding vote. And he's like, I don't know, some guy from Massachusetts, John F. Kennedy, something like that?
Some loser named
John F. Kennedy. Who the fuck is John F. Kennedy? I legitimately love that. I was like, that was such a Christopher Nolan, like... That was literally
the Robin reveal.
It was literally the Robin reveal. You should use your legal name, but not as stupid, because John F. Kennedy actually did vote that way. So like that's just a fun moment of him like knowing a piece of information about history that nobody else knew, and like just getting to like dunk it on us. So I love that. Carol, what's your funny Florence Pugh moment?
Just when
Can I guess
she
it?
pulls, yeah, you know.
Okay.
It's only one.
Yeah.
When they're having sex and then they start quoting "I am become death."
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. When she pulls out the book, like, so they stop
Read this
mid-set.
line.
She goes to the bookcase, and I'm like, okay, sex is over. That makes sense.
Yeah.
She wants a
And
little
then they
read.
continue
He's probably
having
not doing anything for her. That doesn't surprise
Yeah.
me in the slightest. But then, no, she grabs it, holds it open, and then sits on top of him again. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, we're doing this. We're continuing
That's
to
fair.
do this.
That was a little funny.
Here's the reason that I love that decision, though, like the writing decision, because I was thinking about how they would use the line, the famous Oppenheimer line in this movie. Are they just going to have him do, like he says it on the tape in real life, like just framed the same way and whatever? But
well, they already said it at the beginning.
In voiceover, I think. Yeah. We find out the context of why he comes to, like, why that line is so important to him, and I think what they were trying to do there is fuse the idea for him of sex and being so powerful after, like, creating a world-destroying weapon, and how that, as we've discussed, corrupts him as a character.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually.
And then the line comes back one more time during the test explosion.
Yeah.
Which is, like, the best scene in the movie.
Yeah, and also very tastefully done with the line and getting the science right of, like, seeing the light first and then him saying the line and that being the moment when all the sound kicks in from the explosion.
Yeah.
Very tastefully done. Yeah, I agree with that.
But yeah, funny scene. I also kind of chuckled when I knew that line was coming.
I forgot. It was one of those things where when she grabbed the book and she's like, oh, it's Sanskrit, I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. But then, like, I just settled into, like, okay, they're going to do the line here. But when they kept having sex after, that definitely got a bit of a laugh out of me, where I was like, oh, has he just been sitting there hard this whole time? Like, what the fuck?
Right?
Like, what the hell? Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Okay. Barbie.
Carol, you go first.
Go ahead.
Oh man, the way that Greta Gerwig will take thoughts out of my brain that I could never put into words and then perfectly put them into the best 2-hour movie I've ever seen in my whole life. I will forever be grateful for that woman. I will die at her feet if she asks me to. I was just so happy. Also, I did a very good job and remained pretty oblivious to what the actual film was about, which was definitely the way to go. I honestly saw maybe the first trailer and I was like, okay, you know, she has to leave Barbie land because she's no longer perfect, and that's like kind of all I got out of it, and I'm very happy that it stayed that way, because then when the story revealed itself to be what it was mostly a surprise. Like, obviously I suspected like something of that nature to happen, but as probably most people know now, like, everything was done in such like a sympathetic and like loving and caring way. Even I could never even imagine doing. Like, she's just such a good person. I would have shit on men so hard. All the reviews that all of the 1-star reviews that men were leaving that are all fake would have been true if I made that movie, to be honest. I would have been so mean. But it was just the perfect little movie about our fucked up little worlds, and I'm just so happy it exists, and I'm seeing it again on Friday. And it was so fucking funny. So funny.
It was hilarious. I also love this movie.
Excellent.
We were talking about it after the, like, for us, triple feature, but like double feature weekend of, like, we were ordering the movies, and I then and now still can't really decide. Like, I love both of them for very different reasons, and I still haven't really decided on an order between the two. But I also had a blast with this movie. And like you said, it was one of the funniest movies I've seen all year.
Yeah. Hilarious. I didn't know she could be so funny.
I will third all these opinions. I absolutely love this movie. And I think a lot of people that we left the group with, we were all like pleasantly surprised. And not because we were expecting it to be bad, but because I think for a lot of us, like, we had basically seen, kind of like you, Carol, like, seen one trailer. And, like, I'm like, Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach obviously, like, co-wrote. She directed it, he co-wrote. But, like, that creative team with the people involved, like, from the announcement, I was like, this sounds great. And then I saw the first trailer and I was like, okay, like, it definitely looked funny and entertaining. And I fully expected it to be a funny and entertaining movie that I would watch and have a great time with, and then move on. But I think even, like, it even, like, surpassed those expectations. Like, I think this is legitimately one of the funniest. This is gonna go in that upper echelon of just like comedy movies for me. I was
the 21 Jump Street
section. Yes, I was cackling at so many parts of this movie. Like, it is so hype, and it's what we've always talked about. It's so hyper specific in its humor at parts. It just makes it like even funnier. And yeah, I mean, obviously, and I think the messaging, and this is, I was thinking a lot about Promising Young Woman, actually, because I remember when we did that review, I had kind of talked about how, because that was the first time I had seen it for the podcast, and how all the like promotion that I saw for it made it seem like this like slasher horror that's all about like killing rapist men, and the three of us were like, yeah, that'd be a fun, good movie, but it's just a very different movie from this, and this being more like nuanced like heightens it. And to a certain degree, I was expecting Barbie to just be like a pure like dunk on men fest, and it would still be a hilarious, fun movie. But I think like the nuance that the movie has, and like I was talking about with like Ken being the villain but not being a mustache twirling asshole. And I think, and I don't know if like Greta has talked about this specifically, or this is more just like the internet, like people with good media literacy consensus, is that like the men in this movie are supposed to be, well, and I guess to a certain degree all the characters in this movie, but it's more representative of like growing up than anything, and the idea that like young people have these like very pure good intentions, and then like the world crushes them and makes them like the bad people that they end up becoming. And I thought that was very, very lovely, because you still get to have your like definitely super feminist movie that's all like fuck the patriarchy, but not in the very obvious way of just having like a guy be there and be a douchebag and we just set him up to be an asshole for the sake of it. It's like, no, you actually did something interesting and creative with it. And across the board, performances, incredible. As we talked about, Margot Robbie, incredible. Probably my second favorite performance of her career. But a lot of the performances, particularly in general, a lot of the like Barbie or Ken characters are very rooted in like, this is my niche and like I do this thing. You know what I mean? And so even Margot Robbie's Barbie like is the like the baseline Barbie, the standard Barbie. And so her performance is not necessarily like a bombastic performance. It's more just like, it's a subtle, nuanced like baseline Barbie performance that like drops into these like moments of growing up or whatever. But yeah, Ryan Gosling as Ken deserves an Oscar nomination. Yeah. This man is so unbelievably funny, and I mean, I knew he was hilarious from fucking, what's the movie that we love? The Nice Guys. Like, he's so funny in that, and just continue that in this. And then Michael Cera as Alan, like, come on. Yeah. That was like,
with a bigger part than I thought he would have.
So he's so good. Hands down. Best male character. So good. We love Alan.
Oh my god, one of my favorite jokes, and he's like, man, if these Kens ever figure out to start building the walls sideways, we're really gonna be fucked. And then just the walls go straight. I was sitting next to Miguel for this movie, and we lost our shit at that joke. That was so funny.
And I will say, like, my biggest fear going into this movie and, like, seeing the world is I was like, okay, like, I understand, obviously, it's Barbie, it's plastic, it's pink, it's over the top, and, like, yes, we do go into the real world, but I was scared that it was going to be like too lighthearted and like cheesy almost. I mean, I should trust Greta more than that, you know, by now. She's proven herself, so I shouldn't have had that fear. But obviously it was not too cheesy, because I cried so much. The most I've cried in so long. So yeah, just if anyone is listening to this before watching Barbie, which like you probably shouldn't, because going forward it might get more spoilery, because I don't know how to talk about it more without veering into spoiler territory from here on out. But yeah, just in case like you hear us talking about how hilarious it is, like just know, like, especially if you are a woman, you're gonna be so fucked up at the end of this.
Yeah.
So it's not all funny. It is so funny. I like almost peed my pants laughing, but also ouch. So ouch.
I will say, I think the movie, in terms of the ouch stuff, did a pretty good job of hitting ouch moments, but then not lingering on any individual ouch moment too long for the movie to get really like saccharine cheesy. Like, aw, like, don't we just love like everything? Like, it was very like just like poignant moment, and then like tons of humor and like
it almost moved on too fast, because I'd still be like full body sobbing, but then also like cackling at the same time, because they moved on to a hilarious joke.
And also, to your point about the palette and set design and all that stuff, you think of pink when you think of this movie. My one worry going in was that, like, the overload of the pinkness and design of it would give me, like, a stomachache visually. But it didn't. Like, I'm glad to say everything looked really great. It looked as real as possible. And also, like, there were moments where it looked like, on purpose, you could see through the curtain of the filmmaking of like the moving backgrounds and stuff. And I loved that decision.
That was very cool.
This movie was unapologetically like an auteur vision.
Oh, yeah.
From Greta. And then also, to touch on the plot, I guess, it's kind of a spoiler. We can say spoilers now, but, like, because I also was light on the trailers, I was expecting this movie to be, like, the beginning takes place in Barbie Land, and then Act 2 and 3 is, like, fish out of water, them in the real world. But that was really just the middle. Yeah. They start in Barbie Land, have their brief adventure in the real world, and then the finale is in Barbie Land again.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it didn't just turn into another fish out of water movie with Ken and Barbie just hanging out in the real world. Like, oh, isn't this crazy? Like,
yeah.
But that served its purpose in the story, and they brought it back to Barbie Land where it gets corrupted and they have to save it. And...
yeah, it had a real good structure. Like, each act was sort of, like, individually defined by the elements of what was going on. It didn't, like, linger in any area too long. But the, like, end of the first and into the second act, actually, and in general, a lot of the movie, but that part in particular, reminded me a lot of Elf. Because there was this, like, this hyper-stylized surrealism of, like, where... like this cartoon land, and even like the way they like travel from the cartoon land felt very Elf, where it's like, yeah, you just like go through this and do that thing, and then
Will Ferrell
and,
was there,
and then Will Ferrell shows up. Yeah.
By the way, he doesn't have a huge part, but he's hilarious.
He's very funny. At one point, Barbie is like talking to the board of directors, and she's like, "Oh, like there's no woman on this board or whatever," and then one of the guys is like. Well, I have no power, so I'm basically a woman.
That is the line that for some reason made me laugh the hardest in the entire movie, start to finish.
Yeah. Me and Miguel, again, like, Miguel literally was like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, he couldn't stop laughing. That was a perfect line.
And now that we are in spoiler territory, I do want to say another thing that I was a bit afraid of, because I knew, just obviously given the fact that it is Barbie, it was going to have to talk a bit about, like, women and like how we're regarded, and like this also is partially showing how much the patriarchy has poisoned my brain, but like I was a bit scared that if she like, and when the plot was revealed that like Barbies were brainwashed and then they had to like tell them fucked up shit to get them unbrainwashed, I was almost like they're just gonna start listing off fucked up views of women and like behaviors we have, and I'm almost like over that. Like it almost makes me cringe at this point, because it's like women get it, obviously it's all true, but like people say it all the time, the men who know it, and like some of the men are now just like being fucking weird about it, and they're like saying sorry to me for being a man, and it's like this is not helpful anymore. I don't just need a fucking laundry list of like what, when and how and why men are shitty to women. Like, so I was a bit afraid that like if they started just like listing points like that to brainwash Barbies, that I would like be like, okay, this fucking again. But thankfully it didn't hit like that. But like, yeah, like the men who get it, or they get it too much now, and then the men who don't get it will never get it. So I was just like, can we not do this part? But like it was quick, which I appreciated, and it did still feel like fresh and new, and it wasn't just like hitting the same nail over the head, because I am kind of tired of like, yeah, of course all women are scared when we walk at night, like that's just fucking life, like you don't need to like have, that's not a big thing anymore, you know, we're past it. It's true, it's gonna be true till I fucking die, but like it's just the world we live in, and like that doesn't need to be here, you know? So I was happy that it wasn't like too lingering in that space for too long, and that's also part of the reason why like any of the men who are like, this is men bashing, it's like, it's really not. And now my TikTok is 100% Barbie, so unfortunately I can't go on TikTok without sobbing, because it's all just like interviews with Greta Gerwig and it's all like playing the Billie Eilish song. So my TikTok is not like a haha place anymore. I'm learning a lot and it's great, but it's just all beautiful or sad. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, they pointed out that something I also really appreciated is, in theory, we were supposed to see Barbie Land at the beginning of the movie, or at least I guess in Ken's vision, as like the reverse of the patriarchy. Like he was living in a world run by women, but in that world no one was ever physically threatened and blah blah blah. It wasn't really the reverse at all. And I guess I also appreciated that then when Ken did bring back the patriarchy, that he was too naive to also bring that shit into it. Because yeah, that's when it would have been like, this isn't fun anymore. So like it was able to poignantly bring up those points and have like everyone who watched the film like understand it and take whatever they want to take away from it. But it wasn't a bummer, and especially after Oppenheimer, I really appreciated this. Like obviously it made me cry because it was just like raw and real and stuff. But, like, I still left that movie feeling so good, you know?
Yeah. There was a great mix of tone that day.
Yeah.
In all three of the movies we saw, actually.
True, actually. No, I think, I mean, whatever like marketing gimmicks of like Barbenheimer aside,
Yeah.
like legitimately it was a fantastic double feature. Like even like we talked about thematically, they kind of work together in some ways, but then like tonally it's so beautiful to have like these two complete different things. And then even like the fact that like something like Oppenheimer that's such a like literally focused in on one man, whereas Barbie is then like focused in all about like women and stuff. So like it just like it's like yin and yang, you know, they complement each other so well as a double feature. Like for the rest of my life I will probably watch, that's not true, I'm not gonna watch Oppenheimer that many times in my life, but I would love to do them as a double feature again, like on home media one day, because that would be fun.
I was gonna say, because I want to watch both of these again, but I don't think I would double feature them at the movies again.
No.
Without being able to pause, have a pee break, that was tough.
I mean, as it was, we were at the theater for about 12 hours on Saturday, so, which is so ridiculous to think back on.
Also, the day after I got back from vacation, like I flew in the night before, had an engagement party, went to sleep, woke up, showered, and went to the movies for 12 hours.
I couldn't believe you also had an engagement party immediately upon arrival. I was like, are these people not exhausted?
It wasn't like it was just like our parents.
Sure, but I'd still be like, guys, let me rest for an evening. Could we have done this as a breakfast?
Big day tomorrow.
I was like, guys, I got a big day coming up. Get the fuck out of my house. How would we recommend both these movies? Watch.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Oh, like just watch or not watch?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, watch Oppenheimer if you
say,
think you really like, you know, the story of it. I think if you don't watch it and you die, you'll be fine. If you think you'll care and you want to sit through it, do it. But I don't think it's like, I'm not going to be like, everyone must sit down and watch this 3-hour movie. You should watch it. It's pretty good. But like, if you don't want to, I'm not judging you.
I was going to say, like, you know, if you're the audience for these movies.
Yeah. And obviously there have been, especially on the Barbie side, a lot of like men that just don't get it, like you said, and have just
been
writing down.
Very surprising.
I know, it's crazy. But I think, if nothing else, the Barbenheimer double feature has been a really excellent experience, because I think it's maybe introduced two groups of people to movies that they wouldn't otherwise have gone out to see. Because, like, I don't think my sister or Maddie would have bothered to go to the theater to see Oppenheimer, and they both had a positive experience at Oppenheimer. I mean, I would have gone to see Barbie because I'm a movie person, but I don't think, like, Angela or Miguel would have gone to see Barbie just until it came out on streaming. And they had a really great experience in Barbie. Yeah. So, like, I do think this as a double feature is also a nice way to be like, everyone gets a little bit of what they want, and then also a little taste of something new at the same time. So, give it a go.
But I will say, also interesting that you said the two women who you introduced to Oppenheimer had a positive experience, and the two men you introduced to Barbie had a really great experience.
Yeah. But, I mean, I don't know if anyone left Oppenheimer having a really great experience when the last line of the movie is,
hey,
I think
some
we
of the
started
film
a chain
bros in my
reaction.
program, I fucking guarantee you they would say that.
Yeah,
the
but
same
it's
fucking
just
one
like,
who apologized to me for being a man. Can you tell I
did
don't
he
like
really?
him?
Like, is that actually a thing that happened?
Happened to me today. Sorry, before we move on, can I say just one more thing about Barbie that I found hilarious that I also got from TikTok? It was linking, like, people who gave Barbie 1-star reviews on Letterboxd and then going to their profiles and showing what their top 4 favorite movies were. And so many of them had The Godfather as one of their top 4 favorite movies, who gave Barbie a 1-star review.
That's hilarious.
And I find that to be perfection.
That was a great reference, and also we forgot to mention the Zack Snyder reference.
Yeah.
That was so good. I don't get people that can't like laugh at themselves. You know what I mean? Like, because also, like, nowhere in like, if you're a fan of The Godfather, first of all, good for you. It's the best movie of all time.
Like who isn't a fan
like,
of
that
Godfather?
doesn't even mean it. But also, like, it's not like the perspective of Greta Gerwig or Barbie is that actually The Godfather is a dumb movie that only toxic men could like. It's literally just a joke about how, like, everyone is a fan of The Godfather. Like, that's like the point of the joke. Like, it's not. And the Zack Snyder thing, nowhere in it is it like, fuck the Snyder Cut, or like, if you're a Zack Snyder fan. It's literally just a joke about how this was like a big pop culture moment that makes no fucking sense, and why would anyone care about it? It's not like a personal indictment. Please, for the love of God, people, just listen to a joke, laugh at it, and move on with your fucking life. Like, we're all gonna be okay.
Nothing was said about, like, even the quality of the joke about The Godfather was that men tend to, like, when they hear that like maybe someone they're dating, for example,
they want to show it to
seen
them.
The Godfather, they're gonna sit through and talk about like everything they know about the movie, to the point where it's like, what's the point of watching the movie if we're just gonna talk through it? That was the joke.
It's not like, I don't know.
This wasn't Greta Gerwig coming down on one of the most popular films in cinema history.
That's what I'm saying. Like, imagine being such a dumbass that you're like, I can't support Barbie because actually she made a joke about The Godfather. Like, bro, come on. Nobody's mad that you like The Godfather.
No.
Like, everybody knows it's a good movie. Move on with your fucking life. If any man was going to be mad at any joke, and it definitely wasn't me, because I am not this type of person at all, and I laugh at this joke really hard because I know people like this, but I could see this one joke really bothering some men, but honestly, the men it would bother, fuck them, because they deserve to be bothered by it. Their big final plan to, like, after they've, like, unbrainwashed, like, they're brainwashing the Barbies and stuff, is at the, like, bonfire when all the men are playing guitar at the same time, just singing the songs at the women. Because if you're that type of guy, like, that is very much an indictment against you, so I get why you might be mad at that, but also if you're that type of guy, like, please reflect on your behavior being that type of guy, because you should not be doing that.
The only thing that would have made that scene cringier was if it was Wonderwall.
I know. I think they must have just not had the rights to use it, because
because that is like,
but
that is
also
the quintessential
push work well as well.
Thinking about it from a lyric perspective, sure.
Yeah.
So do we want to briefly talk about other things that we've watched since the Mulaney episode?
Well, I think we'll just quickly say that on the night of Barbenheimer, we also watched Mission Impossible 7, Dan and I, not Carol.
It was quite an impossible mission for us.
Yeah, it was our mission and we chose to accept it.
What? Yeah, where did that fall in the order of watching things?
It was the last one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It was a nice little dessert movie. It's not high quality. You just gotta have some popcorn.
It's not very deep
Yeah.
compared to the other movies,
Yeah.
so it's just a nice little action movie to end the night.
Yeah. I'll give my quick, I think we're pretty much on the same page.
Yeah.
The last 3 Mission Impossible movies leading up to this one, for me, have all increased in quality. 4 being great, 5 being even better, and then 6 being absolute peak Mission Impossible. Henry Cavill reloading his arms, Tom Cruise dangling off a helicopter.
Reloading his arms?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you have to get into it, Carol. This man literally does like reloads his arms before he starts fighting. It's so funny. Absolute peak of the franchise.
And it also has the added benefit of that movie being the movie that Henry Cavill grew his mustache out for, which sabotaged Justice League.
Yeah, so we love it even more for that.
Yeah.
And then obviously in the interim, Top Gun Maverick came out, which I think is probably on the same level of quality as like a Mission Impossible 5 or 6, just like maintaining that level
I
of
thought
quality.
you meant in the interim of us recording the last episode and now, and I was like, that's not true.
No, not true. So anyway, that's all to say. Mission Impossible 7 for me, definitely still a good, fun Mission Impossible action movie. Does it live up to the Mission Impossible 5, 6, and or Top Gun Maverick levels of action movie? No. I think those movies are a bit more transcendental, but Mission Impossible 7 is still in the upper echelon and still probably the best pure action movie I saw. Well, outside of John Wick. The best pure action
John
movie
Wick,
I
yeah.
saw this year. Definitely compared to all the Marvel stuff.
And like Indiana Jones.
Yeah, which we'll
Are you
get
kidding
into.
me?
But yeah, so Dan, your thoughts on good old
I'm pretty much on the same page. Mission Impossible 6 is my favorite. It's the Mission Impossible movie to hold up to. I should say I haven't seen 5 in a long time. I think I remember it being also a little bit better than this one. I think I might put it over 4 though.
Okay.
I watched 4 going into this, and I've seen it like a few times over the years, and I like it a lot, but there are some things that I think are a little bit of a holdover to old Mission Impossible. 4 is very much like the installment that bridges the gap between,
the transitional.
Yes, between old and new Mission Impossible, and then Rogue Nation is like, in my opinion, the start of the new era. So I think I would put it in top 3 in that case, being at number 3.
Nice.
And we should also acknowledge it's part 1. It's a complete 3-act structure. But I'm just saying the story will be continued in the next movie, which I'm excited for, where they leave it off. It's very exciting.
Yes, and also we may have to talk about other part 1s that we saw that maybe don't quite have a complete 3-act structure, which we'll talk about.
Yeah. Are there more than one? I know we have one other one.
No, we have one other one to talk about. And I will say, I do want to say, obviously, right now the writers and actors are all on strike for very good reasons. One of those reasons being AI, and I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say that the villain of Mission Impossible 7 is an AI entity Tom Cruise is vehemently against that, and as are most actors and writers and et cetera, so they made that the villain of the movie, which thematically was just kind of nice, knowing that everyone is on strike against that, partially anyway right now, to see that be the big bad in the movie and then be like, man, fuck AI. I was kind of like, it was nice. It was like a nice like thematic with real life bridge.
But it also makes me wonder when they started writing this movie. Because that is a relatively recent
It is,
thing.
and
not that like AI is new, but the AI,
what we're talking about now, like ChatGPT,
But also the villain of this movie is America,
and Tom Cruise went rogue because it's a Mission
he does
Impossible.
that in every.
It's a Mission Impossible movie, so he goes rogue, and then the movie happens.
Yeah.
Carol, why don't you hit us with one before we go to some of our other theater?
I saw Past Lives at our local indie theater. It's one of the latest A24 drops.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, obviously I am telling by your expressions you have no idea what I'm talking about.
Because we don't get these
sick indie beats here.
It was very good. It also made me cry. So I guess just in case other people don't have the indie news, it's just about like a woman who is an adult with a partner. It is important to the story that she is Korean. She's from Korea. Her family moved when she was young, but when she was still in Korea, she had like a first crush kind of thing, like in 8th grade, like joked about like getting married, whatever. And then they move, she uproots her life, she ends up with a white man that she's like married to, living in New York, being a writer, great immigrant story, success story, good job. Mm-hmm. But then this man from Korea like finds her on Facebook and they start talking again, and like before she met the white man there was like a hint at some romance and they took a break, and now they're meeting in this point in their lives where like they're both settled as like full grown adults with jobs and other relationships and stuff. So it's just classic reflective romantic movie, also like a 1.5 2 hour thing. Touching, nothing bad to say. Gave it 4.5 stars on Letterboxd, so obviously I really liked it.
Well, Dan, I gotta correct you because you said we don't get any indie movies in Windsor, and we did get one indie movie in Windsor.
Wow. That was
Indiana
horrible.
Jones 5 and the Dial of Destiny.
Jesus Christ.
You were waiting for the past 5 minutes to say that?
When you said that, I was like, hitting that.
So should we say first where we stand with the Indiana Jones movies?
I wish the audience could see our faces right now. Yeah. Okay. There are 2 good Indiana Jones movies.
Wait, can I go first?
Yeah.
Okay. I've been a long time watcher of the Indiana Jones series, like since I was a kid, even before Star Wars, okay?
Yep.
When I think of Harrison Ford, if you ask the question, like, what's his iconic character, a lot of people would say Han Solo, but I'm one of the people that would say Indiana Jones over Han Solo for sure. I just think he's more interesting of a character, even though he doesn't really get characterization until the 3rd movie, but I think it's on purpose, because as you just said, there are only 2 good Indiana Jones movies. One is Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first one. It's like an homage to old radio shows, like adventure shows for those type of adventure heroes, and they don't have much depth to them, but this is Spielberg doing like a visual movie homage to that. I'll just say the next movie, Temple of Doom, is one of the bad ones. Mm-hmm. In all seriousness, it has not aged well at all. It is very racist. More than the racism, I think, is the sexism, which I never used to notice because I was just a stupid kid. But like the female love interest in this movie, especially compared to the first movie, which I think her character has aged very well.
Yeah, she's one of the best female, I would even say like co-protagonists. Like,
yeah, of course, this is coming from 2 men, but like,
yeah. But I mean, I've never heard of a woman fan of Indiana Jones ever being like, fuck Marion.
No.
So like, I would assume it's pretty,
So the amount of backpedaling that we got in the second movie with Willie Scott, she is written with absolutely no depth. It is embarrassing. And also, the second movie is inexplicably a prequel, which completely ruins Indy's arc in the first movie, because the small amount of arc he has in the first movie is learning to like believe, learning that the artifact he's going after actually has supernatural power. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at Temple of Doom, which apparently takes place the year before, and all of the stuff he sees during that movie completely makes you wonder why he's not already a believer. Because he experiences even more supernatural stuff in that movie than he does in Raiders. But whatever. And then we arrive at Last Crusade, which is the other Indiana Jones movie that is good. starts with a really nice but very brief prologue showing him as a kid and like how he came to kind of invent this persona of Indiana Jones. And the story, like, that even connects to the larger story, which is about him and his father, which is nice. He learns to like just kind of not put too much weight into what his father thinks of him, and his father kind of reciprocates by learning to love him as a child.
Yeah.
And it's just a really fun, nice little adventure, father and son adventure. Then you have Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which came out in 2008, but Spielberg returned for that one. I have a soft spot for this one because I think it's one of the only 2 indie movies where he has character, the other being Last Crusade, but it is not very good. And so that's where we were going into the new movie that came out about a month ago now, Dial of Destiny. And I was fully expecting to kind of group it with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in terms of quality, but I actually would put it as low as like Temple of Doom. Just above Temple of Doom because of how racist and sexist that is. That is unforgivable. At least this movie doesn't have that. But the story is so fucking stupid. Before we get into the story details, I'll let you say your...
Agreed to everything that you said. Raiders and Crusade are the best. Crusade, lovely little father-son story. Indiana, let it go. Great. You know, they both got to let go of the problems they've had. Nice little thematic moment. Just Spielberg at his absolute goatest.
Good action scenes, too.
Fantastic action sequences in both. There's, like, really stand out, like the tank sequence in Crusade, and then in Raiders there's like the whole like the plane sequence that leads into the truck chase, which is just fucking incredible. Just real stunts, Harrison Ford hanging off of a truck for real, just almost dying. Great, we love it, we stan it. Those 2 movies are just peak adventure. Higher quality because it's Spielberg, but Nicolas Cage, National Treasure, or The Mummy, like that type of just like fun adventure movie, but just good because again it's Spielberg. Yeah, Temple of Doom has forgivable sequences and a lot of iconic stuff, but is not more the racism and the sexism and stuff, like obviously like brings it down so much. It's like, how could you possibly like there's not enough good.
There are some good action sequences, but it doesn't come together to make a good movie.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is kind of baffling. There's parts of that movie that I think are better than Temple of Doom. There are parts of that movie, like when we watched it to prepare for the new one with our friends, where I was like, I can't believe this is happening on screen. Like it might be the worst thing in any Indiana Jones movie.
It has.
Well, it was. It used to be the worst thing in any Indiana Jones movie. And then we saw Indiana Jones 5, directed by James Mangold, who is killer track record. 3:10 to Yuma, Logan, Ford v Ferrari, all incredible films, very well done. Starring Harrison Ford, who seemed so excited to be back. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, co-lead in it. Fantastic. Obviously, we all love Phoebe Waller-Bridge, the GOAT.
Where did it go wrong?
It's very...
Wait, spoilers now?
Spoilers now.
Okay.
It's very... Actually, what I'm about to say isn't even a spoiler, but it's very Matrix 4 for me, where as bad as the Matrix sequels were, Matrix 4 just feels so disconnected and weird, and I think the lack of Spielberg in Indy 5, even though it's James Mangold, who technically is a competent director, the lack of Spielberg really comes through, because it's so fucking boring and stupid. Nothing happens until stuff happens, and the stuff that happens is... Would you like to tell her what the stuff that happens is?
It's just chase scene after... Oh, you mean like...
The big stuff?
Oh, okay. Just a reminder, like, up until now, Indiana Jones has been a series about an archaeologist, like, looking for artifacts of people who once existed, but he could never interact with. And in this movie, they introduce literal time travel.
Oh.
He travels back in time to ancient Greece and meets the real-life Archimedes and decides he wants to live the rest of his days in ancient Greece. And it is so dumb. Luckily, he doesn't actually...
Do that?
No,
Okay.
no.
No, because they're like, no, geriatric old man, you're not going to live out the last 5 years of your life in ancient Greece just because you separated from your wife. Like, what's that going to solve?
Yeah.
But no, that he does travel back in time still, and that was a chasm for this franchise that I refuse to cross. That is unforgivable.
Yeah.
Mind you, we didn't even mention the previous movie has aliens. Like, that was already jumping the shark.
Is that the Crystal
Yeah, we were already
Skull?
like...
Yeah.
I
And
100% saw the end of that movie.
I'm sure, like...
Okay, weird flex.
No, just like the aliens, the Crystal Skull. I remember
Yeah, I'm
shit
sure it
like
was talked about a
spinning.
lot.
Like I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah, it spins.
No, I
Yeah,
saw
you
that.
got it.
And this movie, now we're at time travel. That's where we're at.
And where we'll stay, because they're never going to make another
This
one.
is going to be the last Indiana Jones movie. And yeah, it's so confusing. Like, you brought up how excited Harrison Ford was for this. Harrison Ford doesn't get excited for movies anymore.
No,
But
he was so
actually
excited.
for this one. And he teared up during that reveal trailer
Yeah.
with Phoebe Waller-Bridge. And it's for this? Like, I'm convinced that he just kind of convinced himself that it was good because, like, this is the last chance he's ever gonna have.
He missed the character, yeah.
And I mean, but even
bad.
just like Phoebe Waller-Bridge choosing to be a part of this is so weird. Like, of any franchise, I'm sure she would have her pick a franchise to be a part of, and like this is the one that you're like signing on to. It's a piece of garbage. Like what? Like why? Like she knows quality. Like why would you?
Antonio Banderas shows up briefly.
He does too
for a role that could be played by anyone.
Should have been played by Short Round. Short Round isn't in it.
Anyway, that's all I have to say about this.
It was a miserable experience.
I'm glad
Carol,
you liked it.
What do you got? Hit us with something.
I saw Asteroid City.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I really liked it. It was classic Wes Anderson, you know, all the colors, all the actors. This one I found especially fun because it was like about a play, but then also the play was depicted like a movie, and then the real life sequences of the actors in the play was depicted like a play. So that was kind of a weird, like, mind-fucky artistic choice that I really, really enjoyed. It was also kind of black and white and color, but a lot more fun and a lot less depressing. And the performances are great. Story was good. Great music. Yeah, no, just great time all around. I do recommend it.
I only found out after the fact that was even out yet because I feel like the marketing for that movie was really low-key. I don't know, I just didn't see a lot about it except for the one poster with like 50 actors' names on it. This movie looked like it had more stars than Oppenheimer.
Steve Carell was in it, bro.
Oh, nice.
Tom Hanks too, right?
Well, yeah. Not a lot.
Okay.
Maya Hawke was in it, and that was exciting for me as a gay. Love to see her.
Do you want to talk about something good or something bad?
Let's just do The Flash.
All right, we're talking about The Flash. It's bad. Sorry.
Like, it's so...
Why are you looking at me? I don't care.
We're talking to you.
It's
Where the
bad.
fuck you want us to look?
Sorry for just saying it's bad, but it's just so, like, shallowly bad, I mean.
Yeah.
It's just one of the worst blockbuster corporation movies I've ever seen in recent history.
Yeah, it really is just a corporation movie. There's nothing.
It is just a test tube movie.
What else is there to even say? Like,
well, okay, let's just say this. So, this is public knowledge, but this movie was announced at the beginning of the DCEU.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
And it is only coming out now. Since then, they've had the entire Flash TV show start and end. And
be beloved by fans.
That show has had its ups and downs for sure, but people generally love that version of Barry Allen.
Yep.
And now this movie comes out with Barry Allen being played by someone that nobody likes.
The most hated person in Hollywood right now.
Yeah. Every piece of it was like working against itself.
Yeah.
The CGI, The Flash has CGI human faces like unapologetically. Like we talking about Indiana Jones. That the whole prologue of that movie we forgot to mention has de-aged Harrison Ford. That's because
he's old.
They had to do that. Like he was younger in that sequence, and at least it's for a person who's still alive.
Yes.
The Flash has unapologetically CGI cameos of DC characters who are long dead, and also CGI faces for people that could have been live action.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to get into the cameos because, like, if you care.
I mean, I think the one just to get across how like disrespectful is like Chris Reeve as Superman. Like, the GOAT Superman will always be the GOAT Superman from the first Superman movie ever, and then who suffered a freak of nature accident and ended up being paralyzed and just had a terrible back half of his life. And, like, by all accounts, just, like, this really great guy that had a really shitty thing happen to him. Now he is just immortalized as a gross CGI, fake-looking human as Superman in this movie just for the sake of, I know who that is! And so the audience will clap at it.
A lot of people have come out and say, like, he would want this.
No, he would not want this.
I think what they mean is he wouldn't immediately turn down, like, a CGI cameo in a DC movie. First of all, that's, of course, always up to question because you can never know.
He's literally dead. Yeah.
But especially since, like, if he knew how bad this movie was and they asked him, do you want a cameo in this movie? There's not a chance in hell he would have said yes.
Yeah.
But also... Like, there are some shots, obviously Ezra Miller, like, went missing during the filming of this and had hearings and shit. So I'm sure there were scenes where they couldn't get him on set, and it's very evident. They had to CGI his face, like, talking to people, and it just looks like garbage. And
the way
of course,
they still released this movie, tell me why.
That's the thing. It's like, there are so many people...
shit for less.
I know.
People on the internet, they canceled the Batgirl movie.
Which...
For what reason?
Sounded kind of cool.
But this came out. there are people on the internet like going to bat for this movie, and I can't understand why. Like, I don't know why people are trying so hard to defend. This was like a movie you look at and say, you can't release this.
I just don't know what anyone could get out of this. Like, okay, even at its most base level, if you are just like a Flash fan, you're a fan of the Flash character, you're like, I want my favorite character to have a movie. At this point, the story that this movie tells is now a 15-year-old story that has been adapted in every other medium. It's been adapted on TV multiple times. It's been adapted in cartoons. There's the original comic based on it. Like, there's nothing for you as a Flash fan that you can get out of this movie. This movie is the worst version of that story. Every other adaptation of that one Flash story is better than the way this movie does it. There's nothing for you, okay? Nothing. And then, like, just as a broader DC fan, which I am, like, in theory, a fucking DC fan, if they would just stop fucking me over all the time. Even the simple things they fucked up. Like, I was so excited because in the trailer you see that Batman has a blue and gray costume finally. And I was like, nice.
Ben Affleck's
Batman has the blue and gray suit. And I was like, nice. That's such a comic book thing that they've never done on the big screen. And then that scene happens in the movie. I've been looking at, like, images of it on Instagram. It is the worst live-action Batman, like, batsuit. I would take the bat nipples on George Clooney's batsuit over this.
Stop.
It looks so bad.
Well, we were talking about it, and we didn't even realize, like, you knew going in.
I was
didn't
excited
know.
going in, but then I was like, fuck.
I didn't know about that blue and gray suit going in, and when I was watching the movie, like, I saw it, and then after the fact you were talking about the blue and gray suit, and I was like, what blue and gray suit? It all looks so washed out and colorless that I thought it was the same black and gray Batman suit.
Yeah, it's gross. Like, okay, the one thing that I have said, where I was like, the one redemption for me in this movie,
Let's get nuts.
is just, it's time to get, Carol, we're getting nuts, is obviously they bring back Michael Keaton as Batman. Which, as a fan of the Batman 89 universe, I'm here for it. I love to see it. And Michael Keaton as Batman gets a couple of action scenes. As a fan of those movies where he just looks like such a fucking idiot, just like moving around like this the whole time and whatever, like, to actually have like a modern action movie with like a stunt double and do like a real Michael Keaton Batman action scene, for me, as a fan of that character, was fulfilling. The little moment of him gliding out of the thing and the fucking thing silhouettes like it does in Batman 89, that was cool. Every time the Batman 89 music popped, like when they went to the Batcave and the theme would kick in when they turned all the lights on, I was like, nice. But I'm literally talking about like 45 seconds of footage. Like, there is maybe 45 seconds of footage in this movie that I'm like, I'm there for that. And I'm only there for that because I have an affinity for that. Like, if you don't have an affinity for that, there's nothing. Like, this is a nothing garbage movie. Do not watch it. Do not listen to whoever they fucking paid to talk about on the internet this movie being good. This movie being the best comic book movie since The Dark Knight. Get your shit together.
Everyone was saying that on Twitter and
like,
stuff.
all the early reviews, I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. Like, Warner Brothers copped up a
Like,
pretty penny.
It was advertised as literally, like, the quote was, the best DC movie since Dark Knight.
Unbelievable.
As if Dark Knight Rises doesn't exist.
Yeah, as if, yeah, literally Dark... I think my initial reaction was, it was fine. And then we talked about it, and I was like, whatever. Like, it did the basic Flash story, and Michael Keaton was there, and it finished. And I moved on with my life. But then, like, it's just one of those movies that truly got worse the more I thought about it, and now I have entered my angry era. I've entered my Batman v Superman, fuck this movie for existing, why do you do this to characters I love? Fuck this movie. It's now like the biggest bomb in Warner Brothers history. Like, it's lost the most money, and it deserves it. Fuck you for putting this movie out and canceling Batgirl. All right, Carol.
That's it for that one.
The only other, like, new movie I've seen was Beau is Afraid, but I think that was technically before Mulaney, and I don't even know if I have the brain power to talk about that one anymore. But, like, I liked it. I also gave it 4 stars for context.
Good.
I don't know if either of you saw it. I don't think so, right?
I've been meaning to. We've just been waiting for it to come somewhere we could rent it. So
yeah.
I'm just
No, like,
waiting
it
to watch
was definitely good. It was definitely, like, a bit of a puzzle. I'm not gonna lie, now that, like, I am a few months away from it, because I logged it on, gosh, I think May 1st. Yeah. So it's been a minute, and I forget parts of it probably. But I do remember it being bizarre, nightmarish. Like, it was very much like a nightmare come to life. So, like, it was a very uncomfortable movie watching experience, but that was the point. And obviously, you know, great performance. He's really good at what he does. That guy, that what's his name again?
Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, I knew Phoenix was in the
guy.
name. I wanted to call him Phoenix like first name, but I was like, that's not it. But yeah, no, he did his thing, and I'm glad I saw it. But it was also another one of those where it was like it was so long that I'm happy I saw it, but I'm probably never gonna see it again. Not like Hereditary, which I've watched like 5 times, which is also a bit fucked up for me, but like whatever. It's a weird one to watch a bunch of times, but that one, I could watch it forever. Yeah, it hit. So this one definitely didn't hit as hard, but it was still like, good, and it told the story it wanted to tell, and it was weird and made me uncomfortable.
Dan, I think we should hit our good one now.
Well, we have 2.
Oh yeah, we do have 2.
Let's do
Guardians 3.
Oh god.
No, this movie was good.
Thumbs up.
Okay.
This movie, good. I think we both consider it the best Guardians movie. But it's very much not like recent MCU. That's why it's good.
Yeah.
It's a really standout one.
I mean, it fits in with the Guardians trilogy of just being like consistently good and don't worry about anything else in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, have your opinions changed, like where you place it?
I'd have to rewatch 1 and 2. I haven't seen them in a long time. I think right now, I think coming out of the theater, I said 2, 3, 1, but it could be 3, 2, 1. I have to watch 1 and 2 though again. Okay. But regardless, like it's excellent. Like it's in that upper echelon for me.
We won't spoil because, like, I don't know if you have an interest in ever watching it, Carol, but it touches on themes of, like, animal abuse, and, like, that is the central theme of the movie.
That's the plot of the movie,
really, like, Rocket is kind of the main character of this one.
I think that's a big factor in why it worked, is that it wasn't centered around Chris Pratt anymore. Like, they made a very wise decision,
that was a good decision
to have Rocket be the central character and have him be this really sympathetic character. Not much more to say without spoilers, but I definitely... This is
actually one of the better ones we've seen recently, so...
If you've had Marvel fatigue, fear not. We have also had major Marvel fatigue. And I'm not watching any of the shows, and the movies...
apparently Secret Invasion just ended today, and it sucked.
Haven't seen an episode, and the movies have been rough. This was really a return to form. This was like pre-Endgame MCU. So, if you ever get a hankering for that, Guardians 3, check it out.
It really leaves us hopeful for James Gunn's DCU.
Yeah, I mean, he's making a Superman movie, so maybe we'll get a good Superman movie.
Are they just gonna have him do every DC movie?
Well, like, he's not direct, but like he's gonna be like the creative consultant.
He's like the Kevin Feige. Like, he's basically like in charge of the universe, and then like will occasionally direct a movie as he sees fit.
But he is directing the Superman one.
He's starting with Superman because I think it's more like he really wants to make sure like he sets the tone right and like the universe is kicked off properly. And
so is he done with Marvel?
Yeah.
And lastly,
Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I for the most part really like this movie. We were talking about earlier how Mission Impossible is a part 1, and we alluded to this movie because this is also part 1.
Oh, I was wondering what you were talking about.
Did you see this?
Gotcha.
Did you see this movie?
It's a cartoon, y'all.
She doesn't like
cartoons. Do you have any interest in like?
No.
Okay, we'll spoil it.
Yeah, like this is a part 1, but I think it wasn't handled as well being a cliffhanger because, in my opinion, you can have a cliffhanger but still have it feel like a complete 3-act structured movie, and I feel like this didn't have that. It really felt like they sliced the story in half and just sent out part 1, and now we're waiting for part 2, which is such a shame because every other aspect of this movie was great. It was a great successor in all of its themes to the first movie, but I have to give it to the first movie for being the superior one. It's just such a great, truly the best Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah, I'll back that all up. I had a really great time with it. The humor is always on points with these movies.
Yeah, very funny.
The animation style is always unique and beautiful. Voice acting, incredible. Story.
The new characters are
new
really cool.
New characters really great. And some of the voice cameos we got were cool. You're right, this movie does end. Not. Like, it just kind of stops. It doesn't really end. But
this movie ends.
We talked about this a little bit after, but it seems as though the filmmakers were trying to use one of the side characters, Gwen, to be like the character that has an arc and a change in this, with like the whole setup with what happens with her and her dad and kind of the cold open, and then that kind of gets resolved by the third act. And I think they thought if they did that, that would be like enough to make this feel like a complete movie. But the problem is, like, Miles is still the central protagonist of the movie, and his story absolutely just stops. Like, it just stops in the second act, and the movie ends on this moment of like, we're going into the third act, and then it just fucking ends.
But there's also not a lot of progression with this character in this half.
Definitely not. It's all set up for whatever the payoff is going to be, which is unfortunate. But still, a good time at the movies. Just definitely something to be aware of. Overall, yeah, I mean, look, Into the Spider-Verse, the first one, was like a transcendental, not only animated movie experience, but superhero movie experience. Like, it's just an excellent, complete fucking shock of a movie that nobody was expecting. And this is what you would expect from the sequel. Like, there was nothing about this as a sequel where I was like, they really stepped up their game. It was just sort of like the same really good elements and then a little bit of lackluster in terms of the way they handled some of the story beats. But if you like the first one, absolutely check this one out and get ready for the third one, because it's looks like it's going to be a sick trilogy. So
yeah, I'm excited for the next part for sure. I just think that with a little bit of work, I mean, I don't know the full story, but I think they probably could have squeezed it into one movie, because there's not a whole lot, even of plot progression, that happens in this movie. I mean, not that I guess there's a fair amount, but I think that with some reworking, they could have made what happens in this movie the first 2 acts, and the finale into the last act, but we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what plans they have, and we'll see if it all worked out for the better.
Carol, you should check out Into the Spider-Verse. I know you don't like animated movies, but
I saw the first one.
Oh, okay.
And
cool.
Did you just kind of...
It was fine. I already forget it all. Bro, I don't know what it is. I've tried so hard, guys. Every good animated thing, I really, really tried. I don't know what it is. There's just some fucking block in my brain, man.
It's okay. It's fine.
So that's why I was like, I'm not even gonna waste my time watching the second one if already the first one that's supposed to be the best thing ever was just like fine for me, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the right call. Like, there's nothing in the second one that would change your mind about that, definitely.
Yeah.
Carol, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
As a fellow Florence Pugh stan, have you seen A Good Person?
No, I have not.
Okay. I just watched that the other night.
Okay, yeah. I think it came out in like a very, very busy period of my life, so there was just no chance that I was going to be able to watch it, and I was very bummed.
I was asking because I was hoping you would have an opinion and I could make my opinion based on that.
But you reminded me that it exists, so I have to put it back up on my list so I can remember to check it out.
Do you guys... Okay, if I say this, I don't know if you guys will relate to this, but like... Do you guys know how sometimes... like, in your life, have you ever just like walked in and found like one of your parents just like watching a movie that you just didn't even like know existed, and you're like, what the fuck? And it's just like a movie that is so like...
Are you about to pull a Harry Styles? Or are you just going to say it's a movie that's such a movie?
I was trying so hard to not say that, but yes, a movie that feels so unlike it has a specific anything to it. It's just, you just walk in and you're like, you're just shocked that this movie exists. You know what I mean? You know how sometimes when you're you're around a big group of people and you're like, man, isn't it weird that everybody here has like their own life with their own personalities, and I don't know anything about any of their lives, but it's all as complex as my life is? You know when you have that like realization? Like, but that for movies, where it's like, oh, there's just like movies that I've never fucking heard of, starring people that are like, I know of, but like, what the hell? When did this, like, where is it?
I've never heard of this movie.
That was that. Where it was like, I knew this movie existed, but then watching it, I was like, this is the most Sunday afternoon, like, this movie's just on, and somebody's watching it movie.
Is it like when they
really
make a fake movie for a movie that the character is watching on screen?
Yes, kind of. It's kind of like a fake movie, but at the same time, like, there is talent behind it. So are these like, there's like,
is
these
it because Zach
pockets.
Braff wrote it and we can't take him seriously?
Zach Braff did write it.
Yeah.
Zach Braff
and directed. He directed it?
Yeah.
It thinks it's like a prestige drama, you know? Like, it thinks it's like one of those, and it's not. It's like a very, at least for me, I thought it was like a pretty competent Netflix original. Like, you would just throw this on and then forget it ever exists.
Sure.
And the title is A Good Person, so, you know, fitting to be one of those movies that just disappears into the ether.
Surprised they didn't call it The Good Person.
The Good Person. But I mean, I think still worth a watch. There's some good stuff in it. Good performances. Definitely good performances from the main actors. But yeah, just sort of like, what is this? Why? Why, Zach Braff? Why now did you choose to make this movie?
Sure. I mean, I have a lot of hypotheses as to why and why now, but maybe that'll be for the A Good Person podcast.
We're never going to do it on the podcast. Just tell me.
Oh, just because, like, you know, he's a white man trapped inside during a pandemic. One of his best friends died. The whole race thing, like, you know.
I didn't know one of his best friends died, but maybe I think that definitely informs
his best
a lot
friend
of what
died,
happens
and they're
in this
also
movie.
like best friends with the wife. So now the dude's dead, but they still hang out with the wife. So I'm sure that dynamic played into shit. And like,
Oh, okay. So it's just this movie. Okay, I see. So his life just happened, and then he wrote it down, and now there's a movie about it. Okay.
Do you guys have any other projects
after we talk
that you
about
wanna...
death and dying, no, I think I'm good.
No, but I will say, Dan, I'm very excited for us now that I have been to Star Wars Land and got my lightsaber and reinvigorated my love to go back and watch
Let's go back.
the Star Wars movies of our youth. You know, we're not gonna watch the shows. We're not gonna watch the fucking endless hours of cartoons and shit. But we will watch the original trilogy and the prequels and some of the documentaries, because the documentaries are interesting, and I'm very excited for that. But we haven't started yet. But I'm sure in season 4 of the podcast we'll have a lot of Star Wars to talk about.
Have we ever done a Star Wars episode?
No, I don't think we
Really?
ever will, because I just...
Yeah, I guess not. I feel like we talk
I know
about
it
them.
feels like we have, because we talk about it every
It comes
time,
up a
but,
lot,
like
for
Batman.
sure.
Well,
And I'm excited to see Barbie again in 2 days.
Thanks again for listening to the feature-length podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to us if you liked this video or audio. Give us a rating and review if the platform you are listening on allows that. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episodes of the podcast, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the bell to be notified when we post a new video, or follow the podcast on Spotify. If you want to connect with us directly, you can follow us on Instagram at featurelengthpodcast, or even send us an email at featurelengthpodcast@gmail.com. Catch you on the flip side.